And when we got there, I actually had my wall up when we met Gabriella because I thought, there's still 3 days. This may not be my child. So I was I don't think I bonded true. I appreciated that it was a baby, but I was not giving my heart yet.
My big thing was I didn't know if I could love a child that wasn't mine.
Take a girl and a guy, and they fall madly in love and form a family. Sprinkle in some counseling degrees and a doctorate, a dream of transforming relationships as we know it. And 20 years later, we give you power couple Dr. Ray and Jean Kadkodian. And this is their podcast, Couples Synergy.
You are listening to Dr. Ray and Jean Kadkodian with Couples Synergy. I am Dr. Ray.
And I am Jean, and this is our podcast about love, marriage, and relationships.
Check us out online at www.couplesynergy.com and be sure to subscribe to our podcast or send us any suggestions on topics you'd like to hear more about. And now on to Couples Synergy, an in-depth look at love, marriage, and relationships, where we bring you our experiences with working with thousands of couples for over 15 years.
Because we know we are more similar than different, and so we've created not only an avenue where you can hear about people's intimate lives, but an atmosphere where couples come over to our home pub, pour a drink, and share their stories.
People like today's guests, Erica and Brian. Hello and welcome to the show. Thank you so much for agreeing to come on our podcast and tell your story.
Thanks for having us.
Thank you.
And your story is a very interesting one, and it aligns with the topic of our podcast today, and that is
Infertility
and
adoption.
So before we get to that, why don't you both tell us a little bit about yourselves? You know, how old are you? What do you guys do for a living?
Well, I'm 45 and an insurance broker in Chicago. I've been in the Chicago area all my life, born and raised.
And you're cute.
Oh, okay. Thanks.
I'm going to be 42 soon. I'm a stay-at-home mom. I was a non-practicing attorney for some time. And now I am happily home with our 2 girls.
Awesome. So tell us the story about how you guys met.
We met at a bar.
We met in a bar in Chicago, of course. Of course, yeah. I was
How old were you back then?
29. I was 29.
I was 27.
Yeah. And it was a chance meeting. Place where I was working downtown, there was a bar, kitty corner from my office. And I had gone there probably a week, 2 weeks, no, about 2-3 weeks before. I would go there on Fridays after work pretty regularly and got to know some of the barflies there. And this one particular Friday was a rough week at work. And so I said, you know what, before I go home, I'm going to stop in and have a quick drink and just decompress a little bit and see how my friends there were doing. So I walk in the bar, and as I have told my wife, the crowd parted and heavenly lights shone from above onto her beautiful angelic face, and I made my way through the crowd and found my friends who were sitting by her, and as it turned out, she is the cousin of one of the people who I knew at the bar there. And so we were introduced, and it turns out she was in town for the weekend visiting her cousin, who's my friend that I know there.
In the bar with my suitcase.
Yeah. She
just got there.
Just got off
Fresh
the
off the
plane.
plane.
Fresh off the plane, and she had her suitcase with her, which is an important detail of the story.
All right.
Which I'm going to get to in a moment. So we sat at the bar. We had some drinks. We talked a little bit, and I found her to be very delightful and interesting. She had a job where she was traveling about 300 days a year, thereabout, to all sorts of places, domestic, overseas, and I found that to be very interesting. And we had what I thought was a very good conversation that evening. So we closed down the bar. It's me, Erica, her cousin Cindy, and Cindy's boyfriend. Cindy asked me if I want to join them for dinner.
The next day?
No, that night.
That night,
yeah. I mean, since this was a downtown bar, it closed like around 8 o'clock.
Oh, okay.
So it was still relatively early. So I'm thinking to myself, I'm tired. I don't know. Do I want to go out to dinner? Or do I want to?
You knew you wanted to go out to dinner.
Right. So I said yes, but it's an important part of the story that I didn't know if I wanted to go to dinner that night. Just let me tell the story. I tell the story that I want to tell the story. All right. So we decide. All right. I say yes. Well, I'll join you guys for dinner. So we go to dinner at a restaurant called Anna Maria Pastaria. Let me tell you, she was in for the weekend. She packed like she was going to be there for 3 weeks. All right? This suitcase was heavy.
It wasn't a carry-on.
It wasn't a carry-on. And one of the wheels was broke, so I couldn't roll it. I had to carry this thing all across the city of Chicago because I was being a gentleman. I wanted to,
Impress the lady.
her. Yeah, right. So we go. We have dinner. Very nice time. So then we went back to Cindy's apartment, which was close by, and we had a great time. We were having drinks and listening to monster ballads of the 80s.
80s
ballads.
monster
Yeah.
ballads.
Awesome.
Yeah.
Like Poison and
Poison,
Yes.
right?
Motley.
Warrant, yeah, all that stuff, And then I went home. We had plans to meet the next night and hang out again.
So hold on.
Yeah.
On
okay.
Friday.
Oh yeah, right.
Like, are you guys like
Oh,
just all casual, or are you like?
No, she couldn't keep her hands off me.
We made out a little bit.
Yeah.
first night?
The
We
first night.
kissed. It was just kissing. His hand on my knee and we kissed.
Yeah. Which I
He played coy.
I pretended to be coy when I wasn't, and I kind of tricked her into
Thinking he was a gentleman.
So what and this is the move. This is the move I used. Okay, this is, so for your if you have any
Listeners,
single
yeah.
guys out there.
Oh, yeah.
Would say something and jokingly put my hand on her knee, and then I take it off like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to do that." And it worked. It worked, because I was like, "Oh yeah, okay. Oh," and then I take it away like, "Oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to invade your space."
Just to
found
be
me
clear,
irresistible.
Just to be clear, we do not endorse any type of aggressive acts in any.
But it wasn't. It was passive aggressive.
Pat, okay.
How was that night for you, Erica?
Oh, it was totally different.
Oh,
Long story short, I was in town because I had just broken up with a guy. Was very down, wanted a girls only weekend.
I didn't know that.
You knew
You
that.
never told me that.
You knew
Welcome to the
that.
podcast.
You knew. And I was coming to visit my cousin for an all-girls weekend. She didn't tell me that she had a new boyfriend, and she wanted him to go out with us that night. So without asking me, she invited Brian to go out to dinner with us. And I had nothing against him. He was a very nice guy, but I was very anti-man at the time. I was so just still angry about the 3-day-old breakup. Turned out he was a really nice guy, and he did carry my suitcase all over the city.
And I bought you dinner.
And it was a carry-on. He bought me dinner, but then the next night when we were supposed to get together, he stood me up.
I did not.
He showed up very late at night as an apology, but he stood me up.
I had a dinner. I told you I had a dinner.
Allegedly.
and it went long. I raced down the Eisenhower, the 290. I was doing at some point 100 miles an hour, coming from the west suburbs.
Again, we do not endorse reckless driving.
Because I was coming from the west suburbs, and I knew I had to get downtown to hang out with her and see her again. I made it downtown. I show up, and we just picked up where we left off, basically.
And we did go on another date the next night, the day after.
This is
And-
Sunday now, right?
This is
Yes.
into Sunday, right?
And
She was leaving
I was
Monday.
supposed to go home. No, I was supposed to go home
And where was
Sunday.
home?
Oh,
St. Louis. I
Okay.
was living in St. Louis. And I had a travel job. I was supposed to go home Sunday. I stayed without calling in. You're supposed to call in.
Oh.
But you never get put on a trip last minute. You know your schedule. And then I got a call Monday morning. Almost lost my job.
You stayed because of Brian.
Exactly. Yeah.
Wow.
I really we had a really cool connection. It was
different from
anything else.
anything that I remember having with anybody else. And
It was like a family member at first. There was still passion, but there was this.
yeah, let's not get weird.
No, but it was a real comfort, a really strange comfort, we'd always known each other.
Right, it was like we always knew each other,
Right.
and that's
Yeah.
what
So
it
after
felt
I
like.
went back home, I took the LSAT immediately, quit my job, and moved to Chicago to be near
to
him.
be in. She went to law school.
And it
here.
was
But not
But-
in together.
No,
No.
well, actually, we had a long distance relationship for
For a
a
year.
year.
Okay.
Oh, okay.
And where she was still on this traveling job, and
He'd meet me at the Indy 500,
yeah,
or meet me, at different
so
places.
I'd meet her at different places in fairly close proximity. Long distance relationships are hard.
Very.
Okay,
Yeah, we actually had a couple on that had a long distance relationship also.
Yeah.
And they had to make that decision about who was moving
Yep.
where and when. When did you know that you guys were a couple?
I would say a few months. It was such a heavy phone relationship. Like
Oh,
all
we would-
hours
we
of the
would-
night,
and
telling
we
our
would-
life story on
And
the
we
phone.
would talk for hours.
Were you guys already exclusive?
Yes.
Yeah, I wasn't seeing anyone.
Yeah,
I
and
don't think
I
we
wasn't-
said we were exclusive. Like we didn't make the vow of exclusivity, but we were.
Right,
I
because
think I was.
well, and I was. I mean,
No
I
more
wasn't.
surprises.
I wasn't seeing anybody at the time.
And I remember being like kind of coy about it. And one night on the phone saying, "I think I love you," just like testing the. I knew I did, but I
wow.
wanted to test
Yeah.
the waters.
How
And
far into the relationship was that?
I'd say 3 or 4 months.
Yeah. Well, and I knew because my birthday was in June. She was supposed to come up to Chicago for my birthday, and you didn't, right?
Yeah, that job. Like
Yeah,
they'll
right,
spring you on the
right,
last
right.
minute, send you to Alaska.
Yeah.
Like you just don't know.
She couldn't make it, but she sent me flowers and a teddy bear.
I felt terrible.
And that's when I knew, that she was special, and she wanted to let me know that she was thinking about me. She was sorry that she couldn't make it. It was funny because there were like yellow flowers with lemons in there, and a teddy bear, and it.
Except when life gives you
when life
lemons.
gives you lemons, blah blah blah.
Yeah, make lemonade.
So that was kind of cute.
What was it about the other person that you fell in love with?
I liked her independence, I guess, and her wit and her sense of humor and her looks. I mean, she's beautiful.
For me, it sounds, I guess, a little cliche at first, but the kindness, the kindest, not just man, but one of the kindest people I've ever met. Very conscientious, thoughtful, even to this day, opening doors for me. And I feel like he's always thinking of me before him. And I always felt that way. Loyalty, the loyalty he has to his family and friends is something else. And you're cute.
Oh, thank you.
And despite like the kindness and the sweetness, has a great dirty sense of humor. That just cracks me up. I love it.
Yeah.
Did you guys live together before you got married?
Very briefly.
Very briefly, and the reason we did was because her lease was up, and we asked her parents if they would.
Yeah, I come from a
mind.
Catholic family, so I called my dad.
Yeah.
And, he knew we were engaged, obviously loved Brian.
Yeah.
And he actually kind of laughed and had that, I didn't realize it made such a big impression on you that you would even think to call and ask my permission. But yeah, we asked permission, and
Yeah.
he said, sure. Because it was 3-4 months before
Right.
our wedding.
Right.
So how long were you dating before you got engaged?
About 4 years.
Almost 5 years.
And how'd you guys make that decision?
To get married? Or?
Yeah, to wait
Well,
or when you got married, when you got engaged?
I was a little bit of a nag. I'm like, when are we getting married?
Well, yeah. After 3 years, then she started putting the pressure on.
Yeah.
I actually worked it out so that she asked me out to dinner, and that's where I popped the question. And it was at Anna Maria Pastaria, the restaurant where we went when we first
Nice.
met.
Oh, yeah, perfect. In your relationship now, how would you guys say you resolve conflict? Conflict is inevitable. It comes up in every relationship. And how
Right.
do you guys have learned to resolve that?
I think for the most part, for me anyways, I don't sweat the small stuff. Maybe that sounds cliche.
And that's probably what sometimes gets me upset.
Well, right, yeah, and because
You don't.
because
And I do.
I don't sweat the small stuff, and to me, it's all small stuff. Okay, because I don't care about money, I don't care about houses or cars or anything. I care about the family and making sure that everybody's happy and healthy, and and then everything else is just gravy, basically. So I don't.
But we do have fights now and then. We have arguments, not a lot,
No, not a lot,
but we
you
do
know,
have arguments. But I think that is a very probably like a frustrating thing that happens where I want to fight. I want to.
Yeah, she
hash
does.
it out.
Can you
Yeah.
talk more about that?
I think sometimes when he's not arguing back or fighting back, I take it as he doesn't care. When you do care, you just don't care to fight.
Right.
if
I
that
don't want to.
makes
I don't want to
sense.
fight about it.
He doesn't want to rock the boat. Doesn't
Right.
want to, and I do because I want to know that he cares. I want to know that I'm heard, and you feel that kind of
Yeah.
that makes sense.
That
But
you're important enough to
Yeah,
go to town for.
yeah. And I will say when we do have really tough moments of conflict, usually if it's serious, it ends up. I'm not a big crier, but if I cry, that's when you really step up and become very, let's talk this out.
In the work we do with couples, they kind of look at couples who avoid conflict. And they used to think that was a problem, but they know it's not at all anymore. Except if you have a problem and you don't have like a blueprint of how to get through it. But it sounds like you guys do. Like you know when you hit that level,
Right.
and you're showing your emotion, that you like step up and be like, all right, I'm going to sit and talk about this now. And
Right.
Yeah.
so that's a really healthy strategy.
That's good to know.
So how old are you guys when you get married?
I was 31.
So I was 33. Well, wait,
You were 34.
34. Yeah, because we got married in 2007. So yeah, 30. I was 34.
31, 34. And
Yeah.
what are your plans for having children?
At that time?
Mm-hmm.
Well, we wanted to wait maybe a year or two. I think is what we wanted.
He wanted to wait a year or two.
Well, I just thought, hey, let's enjoy each other.
Right. No, I was okay
do
with it. I
things.
was eager, but okay with it.
Yeah. So, well, no, actually, I think what it was whatever happens, happens.
Mm-hmm.
We're not gonna
Not gonna
do anything
plan
to.
it, you're not
we're
gonna-
not gonna do anything to prevent it.
No, that was after the first year.
Okay. All right.
We were preventative
Okay.
the first year. Yeah.
So then we said, hey, whatever happens, happens, and nothing happened
For
and
many
then-
years.
Well, and then we decided to become more active in trying,
Timing.
and that was like a job. I gotta say, it was very stressful. It was very regimented. All right, it's time. Let's go. Let's do it. And it's really hard to perform under that kind of pressure.
Yeah.
I don't remember at what point we decided to get doctors involved.
I think it was at about 4 or 5 years.
Okay.
So you were trying to structure things on your own before about 4 or 5 years before you had doctors?
I'd say for like a year we protected ourselves. For another 2
Right.
years it was whatever happens.
Right.
And then the next year I think that's when we're like, okay, let's time it and
Yeah.
try to make it happen.
Right.
And we tried that for about 1.5 to 2 years.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that was right around the time that some of our other friends were trying and getting pregnant, and it was very difficult. I know it was very difficult for you.
Yeah, especially once we did actually start trying
Yeah.
fertility treatments. That's
Like every month you're like,
everybody's getting pregnant.
Yeah.
And you want to be happy for friends, but
But at the same time, it's like
you don't want to hear about it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's like,
Yeah.
enough already.
Yeah.
And they're popping out their kids, and it affected us emotionally because then it became, well, we can't hang out with these friends anymore because they're pregnant or they've got kids and
Or they have 2-year-olds and they have 2-year-olds,
Right.
and we have nothing in common now because
Right.
they got to go do their 2-year-old
Right.
stuff
Right.
together.
Right.
So we missed out a lot, or we lost touch with some people. All of that creates tension and depression, and it's very difficult to.
And there's even like a genuine crisis of faith, like
Oh, yeah.
religiously.
Oh,
There
I
was-
was-
yeah.
Well, I can tell you that because I'm a Catholic too, and I had a moment where I questioned God and got angry at God, and because I couldn't understand why am I here? What's the point of me living if I don't have a family to nurture and
Like a legacy.
and, yeah, and it was a very low point, especially when the fertility wasn't working. Then we probably took some time off, and then we talked again and decided, well, we still want children, we still want a family. Let's look at adoption.
I felt like during it, I think I had more doubts than hopes, whereas I think
so are you getting the injections and the hormones?
Oh yeah,
and
doing
The
the
whole
shots.
IVF, right?
Oh yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. We did first we did 3 rounds of IUI, and then 2 rounds of IVF. And it's the full shots where you're hormonal and feeling crazy. But I mean, we didn't get far in it at all. But I think
Did your insurance cover
No.
that, or were you out of
No.
I was just
pocket?
going to say no. That's all out of pocket.
no, that was a huge chunk of money. What was it like at the end? Maybe like 30,000 once all is said and done. I mean,
Yeah.
it's brutal.
Yeah.
I was somewhat hopeful but doubtful. I think you were very hopeful, and at the beginning it was almost like I felt like he didn't have any doubts, like this is going to work, this is it. And then when it was failing, I think I was more, actually I think I regret that I wasn't there for you. I was so weepy and poor me, and leaning on him, and he was so comforting and hugging me, and it'll be okay, we'll get through this. I don't think I ever returned that favor when I look back. I feel very terrible about that. But it was a tough time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you go through that for how long?
It was a couple years because we took like a year break
A
in
couple
between.
years, wow.
And my dad was sick at the time, so we took a year off before we tried again. And then when that didn't work, I all along had always even before infertility, had been very curious about adoption. And then even more so as this started failing. And I feel like you kind of went back and forth in a very honest concerns about adoption.
My big thing was I didn't know if I could love a child that wasn't mine. I didn't know if I could.
Right.
But I've since learned that, yeah, I can. But that was my initial hesitation with it. And this is while we were still going through the fertility treatments. And when, after the second IVF failed,
We took time off again.
we took some time, but I was all for continuing and going for adoption.
And during that time you guys were taking time off, were you talking about adoption between each other, or just kind of mulling it over within yourself?
More mulling.
Yeah, more mulling.
Yeah.
And then,
And I think I, at several times, had asked if he was interested. And he still was on the fence. And I would immediately drop it because I knew you can't do this. You can't adopt unless you're both 100% in.
Right.
Did you have any concerns for yourself?
Strangely, no.
Okay.
I knew I wanted to be a mom. I knew there was the fear of, because someone else is giving birth to this child, you don't know what if they're drinking, if they're smoking, if, their health issues. But at the same time, you can have your own child and there can be health issues.
Sure.
So you just deal with it. But I think maybe I was a little too psychotically gung-ho about it. But no, I didn't have a lot of concerns. I just knew I couldn't push it until he was on board.
yeah.
So how did you guys get to that point where you could decide that, yep, we're going forward with
He
this?
brought it up. I waited for him to bring it up, and
Yeah.
he did.
Yeah, and I was ready, and we signed up with an agency, and strangely, and this goes back to the whole my beliefs and my religion and just my belief in karma and signs, signs from above type of thing, and these coincidences that happen. It was Christmas one year, and we're down in Florida, and Erica's sister gets a call from a friend of hers who knows a lady whose daughter had a baby and abandoned the baby in a hospital in Washington, D.C. And the friend who's the grandmother of this baby asked her friend, who's the friend of the sister, blah, blah, blah. Right. Let me draw a diagram here.
I need a whiteboard.
Yeah. Do you know anybody who is looking to adopt a baby?
Oh.
I'm like, oh my God, it's
And this was actually-
it's Christmas time.
And this was before, I think, we'd done the home study and all of that, wasn't it?
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm thinking this is like a sign
Christmas
from God.
miracle.
Yep.
Yeah.
I dive right into this. I hire two lawyers. I got a lawyer in Chicago. I get a lawyer out in the D.C. area, and I'm like, guys, make this happen. Get this child out of the hospital, or by this time it was already in the system, in the foster system out there. Get him over to Chicago. Get him, in our house. Let's make this happen.
Then we learned just how bad the system is.
It's
so sad. It's
so
so
sad
sad.
that here we are, a couple willing, able to take this child into our home.
And not only did grandma want us to have the child, but mom, the one who gave birth to the child, turns out she was very nearby in jail and also was willing to consent to us having this child. And so many social workers involved did nothing. All they had to do was go down the street and get her signature.
Right.
Nobody did anything. They basically cut us out of the loop because I guess people fostering wanted the child, blah, blah, blah.
Right.
But a lot of money into it, a lot of heartache into
Sure.
it.
Yeah.
A lot of time wasted.
A lot of being convinced by attorneys and by grandma that this is going to happen. This is your child.
Yeah. So now we've had failed fertility attempts.
Right.
Failed
A
adoption.
failed adoption, a private adoption attempt, and I'm pissed. I am pissed off, and I'm pissed off at God. What do you want from me? What am I doing here? What is what's the point of all this? It was bad. It was a low point in my life emotionally, but it is what it is, and we just moved on.
And I remember down the road, I found randomly online, I wasn't looking for anything at the time, it said there was an adoption seminar in Wisconsin.
Oh, right.
And so I was like, let's just go. And it was a national adoption agency, and we went, and I think it got both of us very excited. Turns out that's not who we ended up adopting from.
Right.
It's who we were working with. But it got us really excited about adoption. We did the home study. We filled out the paperwork.
We took a class. We had to take a class.
Yeah, we made a video.
Yep.
All kinds of stuff.
So you're like selling yourselves to whoever
Yes.
gets to choose what happens.
Right. Yeah. So we make out a profile.
And it's
video.
amazing the stuff you choose. I mean, it's not just race and what we can get into, but they list every drug. Are you okay with birth mom doing these drugs? It's STDs, it's rape, it's everything you can think of involved in how a baby's created. You say yes or no. Will you agree to this background type situation? And we agreed to almost anything.
Well, except drugs and alcohol.
No, we agreed to a few drugs.
Well,
even.
all right, maybe like marijuana use, but no heroin, no coke,
Yeah.
no alcohol, because alcohol
Yeah.
is probably worse than any of those other drugs when it comes to fetal alcohol syndrome.
Right.
The development.
And development, right? And that was a deal breaker for me.
And is that because you didn't want to limit your options? Is that why you kind of agreed to most of everything?
Partly,
Right.
yes.
And it didn't matter. We didn't care what the sex of the baby was and what the race of the baby was. That didn't matter.
Well,
to
and I
us.
will say part of it, we did talk about, we don't know. We don't have any kind of psychiatric background or psychology or, any of that. It's a fine line of what we feel we're capable of doing for a child with special needs. But at the same time, we knew if there was a special needs child, that we'd be willing to take that chance. Like we talked about, you just can't say no to a child. You
Right.
know what I
Right,
mean?
right.
So
Right.
we were really very open to quite a bit.
So how long between the time that you guys were fully on board with adoption before you were chosen?
A year, maybe?
Yeah, I would say the home study takes a long time. You've got to do a home study. It turns out the local agency did the home study, and they're the ones who found us the child, not the national agency.
What are they looking for?
They want to know everything about you. It is pretty much 6 months of every kind of background check you can have, tons of questions. It's just
Yeah, they come
huge
into your
stack
home.
of paperwork. Yeah, they do 3 visits to your home, interview you. Basically just legal protection is what they're doing.
Right.
Criminal background checks, that
Yeah.
sort of thing.
And I would say once the home study was complete, which takes, anywhere from 5 to 8 months, I think it was only 4 or 5 months till she said she had a baby for us.
So
Well,
tell us about that.
She had a birth mother.
Yeah, that's sorry.
Yeah. And
It was
presented
right around
her-
the New Year, right around New Year's or Christmas.
Yeah, right. Sometime in December. And she, presented our profile to her and arranged a lunch. So we met the birth mother.
Well, and one thing I would say is one of her questions was, are you open to African American, Hispanic, or whatever? And we said yes. And being that, she does a lot of work in the Chicago area, she immediately said, if you're open, we've actually got, it's the amount of African American children who are not being adopted is terrifying.
It's staggering. And
Wow.
and even when you talk about costs for adoption,
It's disgusting.
it's disgusting. And I am so offended by it that
They're a discount. African Americans are at a discounted
yeah.
price, which is disgusting.
It is disgusting.
Oh, wow.
If I do anything before I leave this earth, I want to do something to change adoption
Laws.
and
Yeah.
culture. It's just it's sickening.
I will say, strangely for us, there was no price difference, but it's disgusting.
Well, yeah, it's disgusting nonetheless.
Yeah.
With the national agency,
Right.
it's a huge gap,
And
which is basically saying they're unwanted, and that's that's heartbreaking.
Yeah, I don't understand it.
So how far along is the birth mother when you meet her?
She was 7 months.
Yeah, I think we met in December, and she was due in February. Yeah.
So she sees your profile. There's a match. You guys
We meet.
How is that?
It
So
was
awkward.
it was awkward.
So
it was awkward. So we meet at one of those family type diner restaurants
Yeah.
on the south side, south suburbs, and
Conversation
It's-
was just stilted.
it's Erica, me, the birth mom, her daughter. She already
Her
had
sister,
a daughter,
like the family was
and her
there.
sister.
Wow.
One of the two representatives from the agency.
Yeah, there's a The agency has one person who represents the birth mother and then one who represents the adoptive parents.
And the lady from the agency said, "Oh, don't worry, I'll lead the conversation."
She actually actively said, "Don't ask questions. Let me do that. Let me lead the conversation." And she was 45 minutes late. And
you
led nothing.
But the birth mom was very sweet. She was at the
Very
time
shy.
20 years old, very shy, and we bought him lunch, and we just.
And we really didn't talk about the meat of anything. I think other than do you have a name picked out, there was no conversation actually around what we were there to meet for. And we talked about Christmas, because Christmas had just happened, and the holidays, and small talk, TV, music.
Right.
There was no actual talk about what was going to happen if it happened.
Why you were there.
Yeah,
right.
exactly.
Do you know if they were also interviewing other people?
I don't think so, but we don't know.
Yeah, I don't know for sure.
Yeah.
But in any event, decided to move forward with us,
And for me, I think when we got the call that, oh, she likes you, she's picked you, which was later that day or the next day, it was right away.
Yeah.
Julie called.
Yeah.
But from that until the time the baby was born, I think was the most terrifying time of my life, because all you hear and read when you're researching adoption is the percentage of birth moms who change their mind after they give birth, which I respect and I understand, but terrified me.
And they can do that.
Right.
Absolutely,
Oh, yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah. And that goes back to my wanting to do something about the process. Is there are laws that protect the birth mother, there are laws that protect the baby, and that's all fine. But there is nothing out there to protect the
Potential
rights
birth
and
parents.
the interests of adoptive parents.
And we know people who've lost thousands upon
Oh, yeah.
thousands of dollars because
Because if an adoption falls through,
You don't
they're
get your
out
money
whatever
back.
money they
Right.
paid
Yeah.
Wow.
in.
Wow.
Was the birth father a factor?
No,
No.
he wasn't in the picture.
It was a situation where we were told, not sure, who the birth father is, but legally that was all cleared, so that was fine.
So 2 long months go by,
Yes.
Right.
and what happens?
All right. She was supposed to give birth on a Tuesday, and she had like an infection, so the doctor postponed it for a week, the birth for a week. So that would have been the following Tuesday. So the Friday of that week, after the initial due date passed, a couple of our friends invited us over to their house.
Oh,
They-
a very important part,
Yeah.
the phone call. We get a call, I get a phone call from a very angry adoption agent, not mine, but the birth mother's, saying, this is going to fall through. I've talked to these people, I don't trust them, I don't believe. She just gave me a laundry list where this adoption is not happening. And I kept my cool and kept my calm and was just like, I really appreciate you telling me this. Because she's like, I shouldn't be telling you this. Goes on and on about how I'm so sorry, but, I've got to let you know. I don't see this happening.
This was the agent for the mother.
For the birth mother, yes. Who is with the same adoption agency, but it's her contact instead of our contact calling. And she was actually asking me to go down and meet with the birth mother and take her out and talk to her. And I was like, absolutely not. This is, I don't know the details. But so I was devastated. And I called, a good friend of mine down the street and, bawling, this isn't happening, because she'd been very involved, there for me. So they invited us over to basically forget all your troubles. And
have some
Be
drinks.
happy.
Yeah. So we tie it on. We just we're drinking, we're laughing. And it was a nice release. It was
It
a
was.
nice break for us.
And the next
So
morning,
the next
hungover,
morning-
we get a call.
Like at 8 a.m.,
We're such
the phone
pain.
rings. I'm like, who the heck is this calling so early on a Saturday morning? And I'm hungover. And it was the adoption agency telling us
She's like, congratulations.
she gave birth this
2 hours
morning.
ago.
Yep. 7 a.m. she gave birth. And this was in Harvey, Illinois, that she gave birth.
Did you know if it was a boy or a girl?
Yeah.
She told us
they
it was
told
a
us
girl,
it was a
yeah.
girl.
Okay.
And we knew when we met that it was
Yeah,
a girl.
right. Yeah, she knew. Yeah.
Were you prepared?
No.
No.
I mean, I was thinking it was going to happen on, coming Tuesday.
Right.
So,
And even in the broader scheme of things, knowing that it could fall through, we were really hesitant to put a nursery together, to do anything. So we did have a crib and a few things in boxes, but we really were not prepared for a baby at all.
Yeah. So after getting up, showering, and getting ready, we hightailed it down to Harvey, Illinois, and met
Your daughter.
Our daughter. Yeah. And
Did you guys name her, or did someone else name her?
We named her.
Okay.
We named her. She asked, the birth mother asked us ahead of time if we had a name. And it's, the birth mother's right to sign the birth certificate and everything. So she asked us the spelling, the middle name, everything. And,
Awesome.
and
so
put
she
in what
put
we
it.
asked.
Yeah. She put that name on. Wait, I guess no. Technically, she.
It was her
didn't.
last name.
It was her
Legally,
last
it was her
name,
last
yeah,
name, but it
right.
was, the name we picked out first and middle. And she was there 2.5 days in the hospital. And so were we. And I think that was one of the strangest experiences.
Well, the first day,
We did
that
have privacy.
Saturday, they put us in a private room with the baby, just Erica and me.
Okay.
And we fed it, we changed it. Well, all right. And we spent the whole day with
It was
the
a
baby.
great day.
Yeah.
Did the birth mom have any contact with her?
At that time, we were told she had said she didn't want to see the baby.
Okay.
No.
Now
So
Sunday
that's what we're
comes.
envisioning when we come down to the hospital the next day.
Right. So Sunday we drive back down there, and
She's in
The
the mommy's
baby's
arms,
in-
birth mother's arms,
the mother's
in her room.
yeah.
Yeah.
So I really didn't think anything of it. Erica, I think, was.
Oh, I could
more
have crumbled
concerned.
that moment.
But as soon as we got there, the
She
birth
handed
mother
her
she
over.
handed her over to us. And said, "There you go."
And we basically, the entire day, we stayed in the birth mom's room. Very little conversation, but I think it was important to her to see us with, at that time, her child.
Yeah.
Because she didn't know us. And I'm sure she wanted to get a feel for if she was doing the right thing and who we were.
Sure.
Very little conversation, but it was sweet because it would be, every now and then out of the blue, she'd just be like, "Are you going to get her in volleyball? Are you going to get her in dance?" Just little questions that were really sweet. And
Well, and she was in a lot of pain too.
she'd had a C-section, so she was in
Oh.
pain. But very little conversation. So even then it was awkward, but the conversation that we had was valuable,
Yeah, and then in the state of Illinois, a birth mother has
3
days before she is able to sign away her parental rights. So Monday comes, and the hospital wants to discharge the baby, but the mom has to stay because she had a C-section. There was some, they were waiting for her to heal a little more, I guess, before they released her. So they released the baby to us. We take the baby home,
But she's still not legally.
but she's still not legally ours. So, I don't think either of us really slept that night.
I held her the entire night in my arms. I
Yeah.
didn't sleep because I didn't know.
Yeah, and then the next day, in probably almost the early evening, her mother came up. My parents came over, and we got the call that she signed the
Yeah.
paperwork, and
It was official.
Best
It was
feeling
official.
in the world.
and then
Best feeling.
we celebrated. I got champagne and Kentucky Fried Chicken.
Can you talk about how it felt to bond with her?
Oh, it was almost immediate. I mean, I'm looking at this baby, and I think in the past I had always thought about having a boy that I could wrestle with, that I could play ball with, football with, and just have a son. But when I looked at my daughter, it was game over, man, game over. And she just, I was hooked right there.
And I saw it with him. I actually saw it because I would not say that he's a baby person. It's like, oh, there's a baby. Not a big deal. And when we got there, I actually had my wall up when we met. Gabriella is her name, because I thought there's still 3 days. This may not be
Right.
my child. So I was I don't think I bonded true. I appreciated that it was a baby, and I love babies, but I was not giving my heart
Right.
yet.
You
And I
didn't
could
want your hopes dashed or anything
No.
like that, right?
And I could see that he was giving himself freely, and he was the first to hold her, the first to get in the room and look at her and touch her, and I was actually admiring the way he was doing it and was kind of following his lead. But I think I was going through the motions, whereas his was genuine. And I was just like, okay, he's doing this, so I'll do this. But and I loved her, but I didn't feel her yet, if
Yeah.
that makes sense.
Sure.
And I think you did.
Yeah.
I saw it. Yeah.
You know, was there any feedback from family members? You know, did they, you know, through all IVF, you know, through the, you know, moment that you guys made a decision to adopt and then actually adopting, you know, what kind of messages were you getting from family?
Well, I'll speak to my side of the
Okay.
family. My dad had passed, but before he passed away and before he had any idea that we had fertility issues, he'd always told me that I should adopt, which I find fascinating
Interesting.
now when
Wow.
I look back.
Yeah.
And what surprises me is he even said, I don't understand why race is a factor.
Wow.
And the fact that I look
Wow.
back and my dad was very pro, you know.
So our listeners
And just-
don't know what race
right,
you guys
just
are.
to be clear,
Okay.
you guys are Caucasian.
Right.
Yes, and but we have 2 daughters now. They're both African American.
Okay,
Yes.
okay.
And both their birth parents are African American, so
Okay.
they're full. But yeah, and my mother, she was very for it, and you know, she, as soon as we mentioned that we were going to adopt, she would then kind of refer to my dad and how happy your dad would have been, that kind of thing. I think, well, she was never against IVF, but I think she was a lot more excited about us adopting than she ever was about IVF. And I will say I was worried about both your parents and my parents, because I at least come from a family where you don't talk about race. So I didn't know if they were racist. I didn't think they were, but I didn't know.
Right.
So you're like, would you care if we're adopting black? You know, you kind of slide it in there. And, you know, even with my brothers and sisters, I did that. And come to realize everybody was 100% okay
Yeah.
with it.
Now, did you guys ever have any concerns about just the cultural differences? And
Still
you know,
do, yeah.
still, I imagine, still kind of trying to figure that out. Yeah.
Right, and I think one of the things that really worked to our favor was that we had talked after we adopted Gabby that we would like to adopt another African American baby, so that Gabby would have somebody
They'll have each other.
to that looks like her to grow up with. Because let's face it, you know, we're out here in, you know, Wonder
We're your
Bread-
neighbors. You know this neighborhood.
Wonder Bread land,
White
you know.
suburbia.
Yeah, white suburbia.
How
here.
did that work out for you?
It worked out because the Gabby's birth mom reached out to the agency earlier this year and let them know that she was pregnant again, and asked them to ask us if we would adopt this one too.
Wow.
And we now have a 10-week-old baby girl at home.
And their
we
sisters.
And their
And their
sisters.
sisters, yes.
We couldn't have. Hollywood couldn't have written this one,
Right.
I mean, it worked
It's
out
so
so
beautiful.
perfectly.
The story is so beautiful.
I do worry about all the answers we're not going to have for them. I worry, you know, it's just, even though I think it was casual, if that's the right way to say it, I've heard the N-word in the park when, you know, guys are playing basketball at, you know, just down the street from us. You hear that, and I don't know how qualified I am to make her understand or to help her understand the way a African American could, an African American mother or father who has lived through it and experienced it. So that terrifies me, because I don't want to break her spirit. I don't want to say the wrong thing.
And I've
I
felt
shouldn't say her
myself
there. Sorry.
really. I've heard it too, and there are times when I've got to control my anger, because, you know, I'll confront people about it, you know, and I don't want to, you know, go down that road to, you know, do something and then I get in trouble. But it angers me, and honestly, I see life differently now that I'm the father of 2 African American girls. Race is an issue in this society,
Sure.
and it's subtle things. Like I went to a Hallmark store at the mall. I wanted to get a little figurine for her, you know, a little Precious Moments figurine. And I'm looking around. All I see are, you know, white figurines, you know. So I asked the sales lady. I said, "Do you have any, you know, African American figurines?" She said, "No, they don't make them." I was shocked. I had no idea. I had no idea that you couldn't get Precious Moments in you know, in Hispanic or African American, and it shocked me and it saddened me, and I think I was living in a bubble.
Mm.
And
Wow.
and this has really opened my eyes to what people go through on a daily basis.
Sure.
Well, and I think that the really tough stuff is ahead of us, because right now they're 2 and 10 weeks old. So they're adorable. Little kids are adorable. So they're not facing what they're going to face when they're preteens, teens, and the
Right.
rest of their life.
School,
Right now,
peers.
exactly. Right now, almost any white person could look at them and say, "Oh, how cute!" Even a racist almost, because
Right.
they're little kids.
Right.
Well, and I got to say that I'm so pleased and so happy with the way that they're treated by other little kids in the neighborhood. And really,
Goes to
kids,
show little kids
Yeah.
do not see race.
they
Right.
don't see color.
Right.
Not at all.
And it's just, hey, you want to play? Let's play. They hug. Little Gabby will go up to some of the other girls and they hug each other, and then they play and they chase each other. And
And what's sweet is they see the difference. They recognize it, because it's like, let me touch your hair, or
Yeah,
they or why is she dark and you're not? But they're not judging by it.
Right.
They're just
Right.
fascinated,
Curious.
Just
curious,
curious,
want to
yeah.
know.
Right.
It's beautiful, but yeah, as they get older, it scares me, because all I know is what I read. I'm not Black. I don't live it. I don't know. I can assume the worst. I can assume something in the middle. I just don't know.
And are there any resources for adoptive parents like yourselves to be able to get more information about the cultural differences, and maybe to help Gabby understand that as well?
There are. I wish I had names on the top of my
Right.
head. The first thing we encountered, which helped, is we had to take an adoption class. This was before we knew what race of child we'd be adopting. And it turned out the teacher of the class had an African-American boy and girl. So her perspective that she offered was from that direction. And some of her advice we haven't taken, some we have. There's... I guess they call it transracial adoption. There's a lot of books on transracial adoption. And there are, if you go to adoption websites, there are actually, what's interesting and strange to me is so many of classes that you see, if you're white and have African American children, are about how to do their hair. And it's like, wow, that's important.
Yeah,
There are
right.
other issues.
Right.
It's just the tip of the iceberg.
One facet.
That's the one
Right.
thing you
Right.
can
Right.
teach. The
Right.
rest
Right.
is more difficult.
Exactly.
Yeah.
But there are, on adoption websites, there's a lot of resources there, yeah.
Awesome. Have you run into any negative reactions from people out in the public?
Crazily, no.
No.
Well,
I
there was, but there was the one woman who said,
Oh.
"Whose child is this?" or something like
Yes,
that.
where it was on the fence, where her voice and her words said two different things. I was in a locker room, and I was wheeling Gabby out in a stroller, and she goes, "And whose child may this be?" And I said, "And whom is asking?" But she was a little old lady, snotty looking little old lady, and her tone of voice said what she was thinking.
But no, whenever I'm out with the girls, it's always I always get compliments on them. It's very nice, and if I didn't, I'd probably say, "What's wrong with you? Don't you see how beautiful my daughters are?"
Yeah, I think. Yeah.
I'm gonna be the overprotective dad.
Right.
I think right now, if people are thinking anything, they're not telling us, or they're keeping it to themselves.
Yeah.
Because I actually have not run into anything yet. And we were told, actually, by that woman, that you're going to encounter a lot of strange questions, a lot of accusatory questions. And maybe as they get older, that'll happen, or maybe society's changed enough since her kids are now in their 20s. I don't know. But no, I can only imagine, as when I think of being adolescent, preteen, high school, you don't tell your parents everything. You don't,
Right,
if you're
right.
hurt in school, your feelings are hurt, somebody says something, 9 times out of 10, I didn't tell my parents, because you're almost embarrassed by, the mean thing that was said about you.
Right.
So that's my biggest fear, is what is going to be said to these 2 girls
And that they'll
is
keep it to
racist,
themselves.
that they don't
Yeah.
let me
Yeah.
know. That breaks my heart and terrifies me, yeah.
So you guys are really pioneers in terms of like how you do this and how you let your experience actually change the culture with you. That people that you guys know get to see the world through your guys' eyes and through your daughter's eyes, which is, I think, really cool. And I think we live in a good time for that.
I think so.
It's so much better than it was, 50 years
Yeah.
ago.
Well, I know my mom said something the other day that I loved. Now, granted, she was helping with the new baby, so neither of us had slept in weeks. And I don't know what I said, but I said something referring at the time to Gabby and adoption. And she's like, well, why do people even have to know? And I'm like, Mom, she's black. And she goes,
They know.
And she genuinely said, I keep forgetting. And it really does open your eyes to how, taking racism out of the picture, if you are white and everyone around you is white, you innately feel the difference when a black person, a Mexican person, anyone is around, because to you, they're different.
Right.
And whatever stereotypes you have, you may or may not put on them, but there's something in someone different in front of you.
Absolutely.
But when you have someone different, as you know, in front of you every day, you don't see that difference. That it's important to everybody else, but that difference goes away.
Right.
My mom, I would never say is racist, but I would say she was not exposed in her life.
Sure.
And has said some things where I just, put my hand on my face, like, you can't say that, Mom. But for her to say, she's like, I keep forgetting, like that
That's
meant
beautiful.
so much to me that
Right.
she sees Gabby and Zoe. She doesn't see their color anymore,
Yeah.
which is awesome.
Well, what kind of advice would the two of you give to maybe couples out there that are struggling, through IVF, or couples who are trying to answer that question of whether they're going to adopt, and kind of going through that whole challenge and struggles that you guys have gone through? What would you tell them?
Well, I would probably say that there's an answer. There is a way for you to contribute to the life of a child, and make a difference in a child's life through adoption and giving them a chance at having a good life. When I talked earlier about being angry at Dad, I really had to, I really put my foot in my mouth and had to apologize to him because I didn't realize that there was a plan. And this is just me speaking. This is just my faith that's coming through here, and that he had a plan, and I, being a human, didn't see it at the time. But looking back now, I see it, and I just wasn't patient, and it all worked out. It can work out, and it may seem like you're in a dark place, it may seem helpless, but to just look to the future and trust that things will work out. And really, I'm a big proponent of adoption, and I think that is there's a lot of children out there who need a good home and need love.
And I would say kind of two things on that. One is, if you're even slightly considering it, reach out and do a home study. Home studies take a long time. And as we learned with that first child, part of the problem with the one that fell through is we didn't have a home study done. Now, it can take half a year or more. And if a child becomes available and you don't have your home study done, you cannot adopt that child.
Right.
So it's worth it to just do a home study. I think it costs $1,000 to $2,000, depending. It's a lot of money, but if you get that done, then should a child come along that you think you want to adopt, or a situation comes along, you're ready and you're prepared. The other thing I would say, and it kind of goes two different ways. I would say if you're going through IVF and struggling, to not blame yourself or to blame your partner. We were in a situation where I think we each blamed ourselves, and I have several friends in similar situations who are blaming, openly, that we talk about it, they're blaming their partner. And when you're in it, you want to place blame. You blamed God, I blamed myself, everybody, you want to find a reason, and blame plays into that.
Which is a very natural reaction.
Absolutely. But it can be so destructive. And for me, that's what was putting me in the hole, is blaming myself. What's wrong with me? Why, what am I doing wrong? And I know, other situations where it's, the reverse, but I would say try not to blame yourself. I would say listen to your gut, listen to your doctor, but listen to your gut. And while I am a huge proponent of adoption, IVF did not work for us. It has worked for so many people. But I can't help but say you can love a child that you did not give birth to.
Yes, absolutely.
I've never given birth to a child, so I don't know, but in my heart of hearts, I know it's no different. I would die for them. They are my lifeblood. They are my heartbeat. I can't imagine it's any different. So I would say, don't let that stand in your way. Don't let race stand in your way. It's a child. It's part of you. They learn from you. They become a part of you. Yeah, and you can write your story. Like, we're in a situation where we're in a semi-open adoption. You can have closed, semi-open, open. You can really write the story of what you're willing, to do. And I would say, don't be scared to explore the options. Make sure your partner is 100% on board before you move forward. Don't do it because you want to fix that
because
hole
you
in your,
want to please somebody else,
and you don't want to just I can't have a baby, so I need to do this. Like, you have to really know and want to love this child.
And honestly, this whole process has opened my eyes to just how little these fertility doctors actually know.
They really
because they really don't.
Because our status after all those years of IUI and IVF is infertility reason inconclusive.
Right.
Wow.
Yes.
And that's
in fact, the last visit we had was him telling us that we should come back and saying there's no reason you can't have a child.
Right.
Well, we haven't given up sex. We still haven't had a child. So clearly there's a reason.
So our last question we like to ask couples: what is it the other person does that they really love you?
For me, it's little things. It's getting gas in my car because he knows I hate to do it. It's when he asks me to do something. Like, he'll say, I forgot to mail the water bill. Will you drop it off? And I'll say, sure. Completely forget. And 2 days later, he's like, what's going on? I know I can say, oops, I forgot. And it doesn't faze him. Like, he's like, yeah, okay. Like, it's the complete acceptance of my failure to do things.
And I would say the same thing, is that for all my faults, she still loves me, and she stands by me.
And this is a small thing, but every day when he gets home, he still wants to cuddle just a little bit. Like, just sitting on the couch close, or it's just a tiny snuggle, or this or that. Like, it's the tiny things that let you know you still matter.
Eric and Brian, we really want to wholeheartedly thank you for joining us today on Couple Synergy. This was wonderful. It was really wonderful to hear your story.
Sharing stories has been part of the human experience since the beginning of time. We hope that by you sharing your story, it has enriched your life and the lives of our listeners.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And for all you listening, if you have any questions or topic suggestions, please feel free to leave a comment or look us up online at couplesynergy.com. Until next time.
You have been listening to Couple Synergy with Dr. Ray and Jean Kadkodian. Couple Synergy was recorded, edited, and produced by Dr. Ray and Jean Kadkodian, along with Organizational Director Calvin Javier and Marketing Coordinator Bridget Reese. Voiceover and music entitled Breathe and Let Go was recorded and composed by Gina Gonzalez.